a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
It's Robbo filling in for Neil today on 2020, but every Wednesday we always have Mandy join us for an update, some breaking news from Israel and the Middle East. Mandy, welcome back.
Hi, nice to be with you.
So good to have you with us. Give us an update on the hostage situation. Of course, it was October 7, a couple of years back now, that there was hundreds of hostages taken. Where are we at the moment with that?
Okay, we're still at 59 hostages in Gaza, and Hamas has rejected every ceasefire proposal so far. There was a report that with a recent proposal by Israel that the Qatari leadership convinced Hamas to reject it to get a better deal for themselves, which has been very unhelpful. Right now, Hamas is demanding a 5-year ceasefire with full Israeli withdrawal in exchange for all of the hostages, dead and alive. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit more later why that is a very, very, very bad deal for Israel and for Gaza. But 5 to 6 months ago, Israel actually offered a $5 million reward to the Gazan people for each hostage.
$5 million per?
$5 million per hostage, and not a single Gazan took up the offer. And you wonder why. Well, there's two possibilities. Most Gazans during the brief ceasefires were absolutely jubilant and proud over preventing the IDF from finding the hostages, even some bragging that they had personally held hostages and were so proud they were in total agreement with Hamas. They weren't motivated by money.
Yeah.
The second possibility is they were too afraid of Hamas and the consequences of providing information and the whereabouts of the hostage to the IDF. It's probably a combination of both of those factors. And right now, Israel has begun a new initiative, and that is they have dropped, I don't know how many, thousands and thousands and thousands of 20 shekel notes, like flyers over the population centres with messages in Arabic and an attached SIM card and a phone number to contact Israel and let them know, where the hostages are. And it's possible that because of the suffering of the Gazans and Hamas hiding in their tunnels, protecting themselves, that the people are very upset. That's absolutely true. Hundreds, maybe thousands of them have voluntarily left Gaza. And this might be a way, just might be possible for them to communicate with the IDF about where the hostages are, privately with an untraceable number that they can't be attacked or brutally, abused by Hamas.
Okay,
So
we'll wait and see what comes of that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the ceasefire, there's been lots of talk about ceasefire again in recent days. Where is that at?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, there's a reason why Israel can't just agree to any ceasefire. Have you ever heard of the word hudna?
No.
Hudna is an Arabic word, and it means to call for calm, quiet, like a truce or an armistice. A ceasefire, okay? The most famous hudna in history dates back to Muhammad's days, okay? And this is where it gets its definition. Muhammad unsuccessfully fought the Quraysh tribe in Mecca and then agreed on the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah. I know I'm mispronouncing that. But basically, Muhammad wasn't strong enough to destroy them in Mecca. He was living in Medina. So he called for this truce, this ceasefire. The treaty was signed in March of 628 AD, and then during that peaceful time, Muhammad consolidated his weapons, his fighters and warriors. He became very powerful in Medina, and then on the 10th of January, 630 AD, he marched 10,000 warriors against Mecca, breaking the ceasefire, slaughtering the Quraysh tribe and forcing the survivors to convert. So the word hudna is understood to mean a peaceful pause to re-strengthen in order to attack again.
So it's more than just a ceasefire.
Right. So the IDF found correspondence in Gaza stating that between the October 7 terrorist mastermind, you remember Yahya Sinwar, and the former head of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, documenting how Hamas used the ceasefire agreement they had with Israel in 2021 as an opportunity to lead Israel to believe that Hamas was weak and depleted, so that Israel would then turn its gaze internally, fighting amongst themselves over domestic and other issues, hoping that Israeli society would tear itself apart, which almost happened. And Hamas, at the time, all that time was regrouping, digging more tunnels, recruiting, stockpiling weapons, and then planning out the October 7 massacre, all while knowing that the Western world would automatically throw its sympathy toward Gaza in spite of what Hamas terrorists would do. So Sinwar wrote to Haniyeh saying that the ceasefire, the Hudna, was a winning strategic move that would back Israel into an unwinnable scenario. And this is what he wrote, just in part what he wrote. It is likely that this move, a Hudna, which is acceptable to most countries in the world, will not be acceptable to the occupation, that's Israel, and will therefore increase their isolation, disconnecting them, that is, from the world. And if the occupation decides to go in this direction, it will tear it apart from within and lead to internal rift and civil war. Now, Israel has been dealing with this as an ongoing issue with Hamas every time they start a war, because almost immediately the entire world demands that Israel agree to a ceasefire and dangerous concessions. The hard left in Israel agree with that position, while the majority are fed up with all of the betrayals, and they want Israel to deal with the terrorists once for all, and hence the internal strife that destabilises the nation. So all this does is encourage the terrorists to be even more stubborn, and it's why Israel is not willing to enter into any more ridiculous ceasefire agreements that don't result in the return of the hostages, Hamas being removed, and security assurances. They know they're just going to be attacked again.
Yeah, no, it's so true.
Yeah.
So what about aid then? Where are we at with aid? Because I know that that's something that's been a bit of a hot potato politically.
It really has. And we have talked about this before. You know, I don't know of any other nation that has been attacked by an enemy who were forced into an unwanted war, who were then required by the rest of the world to provide food and clothing and medicine and water and fuel and rebuild their societies to the enemies who attacked them. It's only ever demanded of Israel. Israel has provided more aid to Gaza than all other famine hotspots and war hotspots that UN and other aid agencies provide for. Israel has gone way beyond the actual needs of the Gazans. But Israeli leaders, they are proposing to distribute aid to Gaza in collaboration with American contractors, and they've outlined like a shift from a wholesale to a retail system. Basically what that means is that foreign aid workers would distribute the aid under Israeli security with precise registration to the recipients of the aid and the quantities. The words wholesale and retail have nothing to do with money, but rather just the distribution, because in the past, the trucks would enter Gaza, the entire inventory would be taken by Hamas by force, and then their storage facilities would hold it, then they'd sell it at exorbitant prices, and that's how they funded themselves. That's the wholesale model. But move to a retail model would mean that the aid workers would oversee the aid, the IDF and the US contractors would ensure security of the aid, preventing Hamas from stealing it, and making sure that package by package it would be given to the people who need it. Now, it's a great goal, and it's to keep Hamas from accessing it, and it eliminates any profit being made and abused. And it means that people get the aid for free, which is what it was supposed to be. It's on the drawing board. It's a proposal. I don't know how that's going to unfold, but that's the proposal. Okay.
So where are we at with the ICC and the ICJ? Now, just to clarify, so this is the International Criminal Court.
Yep.
And the
International Court of Justice.
Court of Justice, yeah.
Okay, well, Israel has been erroneously dragged before both of these bodies falsely, but she has had a small win with the ICC, the International Criminal Court. And I'm going to quote to you from Colonel Richard Kemp. He said this because he posted this online. He said, the ICC Appeals Court rules that International Kangaroo Court's rejection of Israel's jurisdictional objections to ICC's findings on war crimes was unlawful. Their phony case against Israel is now frozen pending further hearings. Okay, that's really good news. Remember, Israel is not a member or signatory of the ICC. And the ICC has no jurisdiction over them, but they issued arrest warrants, remember, against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and also former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes, which they've disproved repeatedly. The ICC also ignored the fact that the justice who issued the warrants, his name is Karim Khan, he is a senior justice, ignored the fact that he has a rabid anti-Semitic, anti-Israel background, and he's also being investigated for sexual misconduct. So he's hardly in a position to be talking about who has morals and, ethics. But also, The ICJ has jumped up and down again because Israel expelled UNRWA from its borders, and they are trying to exert legal pressure on Israel because of that. But Israel's not legally obliged or bound to permit UNRWA to operate within their country, since UNRWA facilities, staff and international associates have been proven repeatedly ad nauseum for enabling, supporting and even being members of Hamas, even active on October 7 and involved in it. And Israel has the right to expel that UN agency, which they did. Now, regarding the ICJ, the ICC, the UN, WHO, any of those organisations, we need to be careful in the world because these kinds of issues are going to result in individual nations, if we submit to these agencies, losing our own sovereign right to decide who can and can't be within our own borders, how we govern our own lives and what our futures are. We need to be really careful.
Yeah, good point. Now, of course, most people would know that there was massive explosions on the weekend at the port in Iran.
Oh, my gosh.
What's come about with all of that?
Oh, that was horrendous, Robbo. It was so bad. This massive explosion took place at Bandar Abbas, as you said, on Saturday. Now, some reports have said the fire's contained. I read a report this morning that indicates the fires are still burning. The Iran's Crisis Management Organization has said that it could take up to 20 days to fully extinguish it. The blast radius of the explosion was about 50 kilometres, which is huge. It blew out windows, walls, roofs, buildings. I saw whole car parks filled with decimated cars. They were just destroyed from the blast. The death toll, I believe, is tragically at 70. Between 800 and 1,000, I believe, are injured. It was a chemical blast from a delivery of ammonium perchlorate. It was delivered from China. It was improperly stored. Apparently, the Director General of Crisis Management had already given previous warnings to this port about the possible dangers. The crater of the explosion is metres deep. The smoke was so dangerous that schools and businesses in the area have been closed. Ammonium perchlorate is used to produce missiles, and they produce those to destroy Israel, which Iran provides to Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, and themselves, obviously for decades. And now Iran, initially they blamed poor storage practices. Later on, an Iranian MP, Mohammad Siraj, he blamed Israel for the explosion. But Israel has categorically denied the claim. Let me just say this. If Israel did it, they'd say it. And it would let the Iranian people know, the Iranian regime know, we can get you.
Yeah.
But they've denied it. They would either admit it or they'd just be silent. They've denied it. They didn't do it. Do you remember the largest non-nuclear blast in modern history? It took place in 2020. Do you remember that?
I can't say that I do.
It took place on August 4th in Beirut, Lebanon.
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, I remember that, yep.
And that's when 2,750 tonnes of unsafely stored ammonium nitrate exploded at the port. Hezbollah had purchased those chemicals to use in its own manufacture of missiles, again, to use against Israel. If the chemicals in Iran and Lebanon had actually made it to the manufacturing process, the potential loss of life is unimaginable. Unimaginable. And it doesn't even warrant thinking about.
Yeah, wow. Well, we're out of time, but just very quickly before we wrap up, a fascinating archaeological find that's been discovered in amongst all this war and madness going on.
Life continues on in Israel, and I love anything to do with archaeology. I love it. The archaeologists have actually uncovered a facility at Tel Shikmonah. It's near Haifa. And it's revealing a facility and tools that appears to be a workshop that was used to produce a rare and expensive blue and scarlet dye during the Iron Age. So we're talking between 1100 and 600 BC, which is over 3,100 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
And we're talking about First Temple period, Solomon's Temple. And it was during the rule of the Sumerian kings Omri and Jehu, who are in the Bible. And it was assumed that producing this purple dye was only established in Roman times in the 1st century. Apparently, ancient Israel was way ahead of the Romans and were producing it then, but also on large scale, like international trade. They've reconstructed the tools, learning how they were used, and it was a big industry, seeming to reveal that the Kingdom of Israel was very, very strong, quite a significant power in the region. The size of the operation at Tel Shikmonah seems to suggest it was an international trade, as I said. There's a whole lot more details that I can't get into now. The article was fascinating, but what makes me really excited about it is it's yet another evidence among thousands and thousands of pieces of archaeological, historical evidence proving Israel, the Jewish people, as the indigenous heritage and connectors to this land, the people of this land. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your update. It's lots going on, of course, as there always is, and we look forward to hearing more next time.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.